Bringing you the latest stories from here at home and across the world. This is Primetime News live on News First with me, Mahina Bongzo. We start off with a look at your headlines.
Sri Lanka to meet 70% of total power requirement for renewable energy by 2030. Power generation at risk. What is happening to the fourth generator at Soleil, for which 158 million was allocated? 6 arrested in Ragama medical faculty brawl and state vehicle used to storm premises. Government to change constitution. Rohitha responds to Sirisena. 3 suspects released from Boralla grenade case. JVP writes to IGP over delayed investigations on egg attack.
And now for those stories in detail. Former President Maithripala Sirisena yesterday revealed that the government is preparing for a constitutional ploy to remain in power. Responding to his remarks, Minister Rohitha Abegunawardena today said the government would make changes to the constitution.
We have around 2.5 years more for the presidential election. Recently, I read in a newspaper that the government is trying to bring a new amendment to the constitution. I see this as an attempt to remain in power. Therefore, I believe that most probably the next national election we are facing will be a parliamentary election.
පාර්ලිමේන්තු මැතිවරණයක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් කියලායි මම හිතන්නේ. කොහොමත් ලබන අවුරුද්දේ වෙනකොට
Definitely, by next year we will hold the provincial council elections. The country desperately needs a new constitution. Even during our election campaign we mentioned this. During the last 5 years they couldn't do it. Jayampatha Wickramaratne was brought to make this new constitution, but they couldn't proceed with it. Our country is changing day by day. Therefore, the country needs a new constitution that addresses the needs of all religions and ethnicities.
දෙනාට එකසේ ජීවත් වෙන්න පුළුවන් පරිසරයක් ගොඩනගෙන ව්‍යවස්ථාවක් මේ රටේ ස්ථාපිත විය යුතුයි.
Former President Maithripala Sirisena responded to questions raised by journalists following an event in Kandy today.
ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදයේ පිළිබඳව ඉතින් ප්‍රශ්න රාශියක් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් කොහොමද 20 සංශෝධනයත් එක්ක ප්‍රශ්නයක්.
නමුත් ඔබතුමාගේ පක්ෂයේ අය තුනින්ද කියලා පාගෙන සඳහන් කරු ජනාධිපතිතුමාට ඡන්දය ප්‍රකාශ කරා.
ඒව මේ පරණ කතානේ. ඕක දැන් කතා කරලා වැඩක් තියෙනවා. දැන් කොච්චර පරණද ඕවා. මම දුන්නේ නැහැ.
ශ්‍රී ලංකා නිදහස් පක්ෂයේ හැටි ඉදිරියේදී කොහොමද ඔබතුමාලාගේ වැඩ පිළිවෙල?
අපි ඉතින් අපේ පක්ෂේ වැඩ කටයුතු කරගෙන යනවා. සංවිධානය වෙනවා. ඉදිරි මැතිවරණය සඳහා අපි සම්පූර්ණ සූදානම් වෙනවා. හොඳ වැඩ පිළිවෙලක් රට පුරා ගෙනියනවා.
සන්දානයක් හැටියට
ඔව් අපි සන්දානයක් කාටවත් තනියම දිනන්න බෑ. කිසිම දේශපාලන පක්ෂයකට තනියෙන් දිනන්න බෑ. සන්දානයක් තමයි.
A discourse has arisen regarding the Prevention of Terrorism Act amid several issues on possible constitutional amendments and preparations for an election. The discussion in this regard comes before the UN Human Rights Council sessions that are set to begin at the end of this month. The government has already proposed amendments to the Prevention of Terrorism Act and has stated that a new law will be drafted on this in future. Meanwhile, several suspects detained under the Prevention of Terrorism Act were released on bail in the last few days. 9 detainees who were ordered to be released on bail by the Colombo Chief Magistrates Court are however still being held in custody as they failed to meet the bail conditions. The Eravur Tourist Justice Court today ordered to release former suspects on bail after they were detained at the Batticaloa prison under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. The 4 detainees were arrested in connection with a statement on social media in November 2020. Meanwhile, the Court of Appeal today said that the decision on the bail order for Hijaz Hizbullah, who is being remanded under the Prevention of Terrorism Act, will be announced on the 7th of this month. President's counsel Ramesh De Silva pointed out that the Puttalam High Court had refused to grant bail as it had no jurisdiction. Therefore, he requested the appeal court to grant bail to his client as it has the power to do so. Additional Solicitor General Rohantha Abe Surya informed the court today that the Attorney General would not object to the bail application. Meanwhile, the permanent representative of the United Nations to Sri Lanka, Hannah Singer, had visited the northern region of the country and met with several political parties. In a tweet, she said, 12 years on the grief is still raw. Families of the disappeared have a right to know what happened to their loved ones and to demand accountability. She added that, quote-unquote, they have a need for closure, healing and redress. Their struggle for truth and justice must be accompanied by social support.
Sri Lankan fishermen are continuing to protest against the illegal entry of Indian fishermen into the Sea of Sri Lanka. The protesters said they would continue demonstrations until they receive a written solution for the issue. Demonstrations were held in Point Pedro and opposite the Vademarachi North Divisional Secretariat today. Fishermen of Palali North in Jaffna also held protests for the second day today. The protest was held by obstructing the Ponnale Point Pedro road. They pointed out that Indian fishermen caused damages to their fishing boats and gear. Meanwhile, Indian fishermen are opposing the arrest of some Indian fishermen by the Sri Lanka Navy in the seas of Point Pedro. Our Newsfirst correspondent in Tamil Nadu reported that the fishermen would begin to continue to stage protests over this matter. Indian Coast Guard officers have recovered a boat that is believed to be of a Sri Lankan fisherman in Dhanushkodi. The boat is under the custody of the Customs Preventive Unit in Rameswaram. Meanwhile, Tamil Nadu's Chief Minister M.K. Stalin has written to India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar seeking the release of 21 Indian fishermen in the custody of Sri Lankan authorities. The 21 Indian fishermen were remanded until the 7th of this month after being produced at the Point Pedro Magistrates Court.
Minister Chamal Rajapaksa has said that India is the first country to understand the challenges faced by Sri Lanka. He made these remarks at an event in Ragama, which was attended by the Indian High Commissioner. The event was held to distribute prosthetic limbs to injured soldiers.
Those of us who are unfortunate to suffer a loss of limb, but they still have aspirations and hope and energy and future. So it has been a privilege for the Government of India to be associated with the charity activities of this organization and support its work abroad. But this is another reminder to us that when India and Sri Lanka face any challenge together, they can overcome any challenge and any difficulty.
India is a close neighbour to us. India is the first country to understand our difficulties. We have received support from India since more than 2,000 years ago. They provided us vaccines at the outset of the pandemic and provided us the required support to overcome economic challenges. Therefore, I wish to thank the Indian government on behalf of the people and the President of the India-Sri Lanka Parliamentary Friendship Association.
Various views were expressed across the political spectrum on the comments made by the Finance Minister to a newspaper on purchasing weapons from North Korea. What have they done as a result of saying how they purchased weapons from North Korea? Based on that statement, the Finance Minister has accepted before the international community, including friendly countries like South Korea and Japan, that Sri Lanka is a country like North Korea and Afghanistan with a corrupt administration. As a result of making statements without proper understanding, we are being isolated in the international community. This will lead to us facing more power cuts, losing fuel and gas as well.
තෙල් නැති වෙන එකයි ගෑස් නැති වෙන එකයි තමයි මේ වයින් සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ.
I feel that the Finance Minister must respond to these remarks. Why did the government at that time use black money to purchase weapons? If additional funds are required during a war, it must be provided by Parliament. The Minister must provide a complete record to Parliament on the funds and the sources from which they were obtained. Why did the government at that time purchase weapons from North Korea? During the war in Sri Lanka, they received support to purchase weapons from China, Russia and Israel. Therefore, he must explain why weapons were not purchased from these countries. What are the weapons that the government purchased from North Korea? The Parliament must be informed whether there are accounts for the purchase of these weapons. I believe these four matters must be revealed to Parliament swiftly. The Finance Minister had commented on the decision to purchase weapons from North Korea in an interview to the Sunday Divania newspaper. The excerpt of the article is as follows.
Quote, how did we purchase Bushmaster guns during the war? How did we purchase weapons from North Korea? During the war, we funded some of these purchases from the black market. My opinion is that we must receive money from overseas through any means. Unquote.
The Finance Ministry published a statement yesterday on the interview published by the Sunday Divania newspaper. The statement reads,
quote, Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Peiris has spoken in this regard with his cabinet colleague Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa, who has categorically denied the comments attributed to him in the said news item. Unquote.
2 people were arrested for attempting to smuggle foreign currency worth approximately 11 million rupees out of the country today. They had been arrested while attempting to travel to Dubai on Emirates flight EK 649. Last Sunday, the Narcotics Control Unit of Sri Lanka Customs had arrested 5 suspects for attempting to smuggle foreign currency worth approximately 25 million rupees out of the country. That is a revenue drop of about 1.7 billion US dollars for the past 5 months compared to 2020. Finance Secretary Artigala has said that talks are underway for a 200 million US dollar loan from Pakistan and that we would receive 1 billion US dollars from India. We can see that they are trying to resolve this problem by going for short-term swap facilities. But yesterday, Minister Basil Rajapaksa and Cabinet spokesperson Ramesh Patrana has said talks are underway to restructure the debt. He says talks are already being held with the International Monetary Fund on this. But yesterday, the central bank says it is not discussing to restructure the debt. They say that talks are not being held with the IMF or any other entity. They also said that informal channels like Hawala are illegal and they will seize the assets of those transacting through these channels and file criminal charges against them. It seems there is no coordination at all. The Finance Ministry doesn't know what the central bank is saying. The President doesn't know what the Finance Ministry is doing. The country can't move forward like this.
මහ බැංකුව මොකද්ද කරන්න කියලා මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශය දන්නේ. මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශය මොකද්ද කරන්න කියනක ජනාධිපතිවරයා දන්නේ නැහැ. එතකොට
It has been more than 70 years since we gained independence. Have you heard about a finance minister who was criticized while repaying the debt, leave alone obtaining them? Now they are criticizing us because we are paying off the loans. We had to settle 500 million US dollars recently. We didn't obtain this loan. There is more to be repaid in the future too. This year alone, we have a total debt of 6.9 billion US dollars, including interest. We will repay every single dollar that is due this year. We can do so, and I say that with responsibility. We are asking the opposition to criticize us if we don't repay it. They can't come to power in this generation. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has aimed to create a country free of debt, even when a new generation comes to power. Handing over power or not is a separate matter.
The finance minister declared open the new building of the Kurunegala Pradeshya Sabha this morning. He received a warm welcome at the ceremony, which was attended by several ministers and parliamentarians. 215 million rupees have been spent on the project.
Sri Lanka's debt to GDP ratio has increased up to 106.7% by September 2021.
Sri Lanka's debt to GDP ratio has risen up to 106.7% by September 2021. It's an increase from 101% in 2020. A high ratio indicates it's less likely the country will pay back its debt. Central bank data indicate that Sri Lanka's total debt had risen to 84.1 billion US dollars by September 2021. The foreign debt is 31.6 billion US dollars.
The Pathfinder Foundation says Sri Lanka needs to do more rather than relying on the goodwill of friendly nations as a way out of the economic crisis. In a statement, it pointed out that dollar restructuring can save over 3 billion US dollars during the first year and that this money can be used for essential imports. But the Pathfinder Foundation said Sri Lanka needs a homegrown program that is credible enough to negotiate with the IMF and creditors. It noted that the program would require a realistic exchange rate, a transparent formula for fuel costs, and also strengthening key institutions like the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Verite research says Sri Lanka's budget deficit will increase from 8.5% to 9.7% if the government provides a relief package announced last month. The cabinet had approved a relief package of 229 billion rupees last month in response to the rising cost of living. Verite research said the cost incurred to provide these relief packages would account to 12% of the government's revenue this year.
And with that, we're going for a short commercial break. Stay with News First.
News First, main sponsor.
Sun all-purpose disinfectant spray.
Providing science education to children in far-flung villages of the country. Tech Bus.
organised by Slit Institute.
Tech Bus.
Main sponsor.
Slit Knowledge University. Challenging convention and redefining education.
Valuable Finance. Best finance company.
Welcome back to the news. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa says the government aims to meet 70% of the country's total power demand through renewable energy sources by 2030. He made these remarks after inspecting the Thambapavani wind power plant in Myanmar that would contribute 50 megawatts of power to the national grid. The president has also instructed officials to select locations at which new wind power plants can be built.
The Ceylon Electricity Board revealed today that 10,000 metric tons of diesel required for power generation had not been supplied this afternoon. The spokesperson of the CEB, Andrew Nawamani, said the consignment of diesel had not been delivered by 4 this evening either, hinting it would be difficult to maintain a constant supply of power if diesel is not delivered soon. The spokesperson added that steps are in place to operate all 3 generators at the Lakvijaya coal power plant in Norchole, which would contribute 300 megawatts of power to the national grid. Several areas in the island experienced power outages last night owing to breakdowns and the power stations running out of fuel. According to the CEB, the power outages occurred since there was a deficit of 100 megawatts to the national grid. The situation at power plants. 160 megawatts of power was added to the national grid today following the restoration of the 3rd generator at the Norchole coal power plant, which was inactive for nearly a month. A further 60 megawatts of power was added to the national grid this afternoon from the barge-mounted power plant at the Colombo port. While steps were taken to resume operations at the Sabugaskanda A power plant today, the Sojits power plant remains inactive. Is there a hydropower crisis? According to the Mahabali Authority, operations of hydropower plants have been limited to 25% and will only be used at night. The capacity of the Kotmale Reservoir had reduced to 64%, while the Victoria Reservoir's capacity has reduced to 51%. The water level of the Randhanigala Reservoir has reduced to 85% of its capacity. The water level at the Ranthame Reservoir has dropped to 17%, while the capacity of the Bowathina Reservoir has dropped to 59%. Water levels of the Castlereagh and Mount Skelly reservoirs are currently at 41% and 52% respectively. Water levels have reduced to such an extent that ruins of settlements have begun surfacing in the Castlereagh and Mount Skelly reservoirs. The water level of the Samnalawawa reservoir has dropped by 35%. Due to the large discharge of water from the upper reservoirs for power generation, that water has accumulated at the last reservoirs along rivers. Due to this, the power generation capacity of power plants located above the Mahaveli, Samanala and Laksapana hydropower systems could run out soon. Allegations of financial misappropriation continue. The general public continues to bear the brunt of the power crisis at a time when 158 million rupees has been spent to cover the construction of the 4th phase of the Norachole power plant. A letter directed by the CEB's chairman MMC Ferdinando to its acting general manager Dr. Rohanta Abesekura reveals this in detail. Although the construction of the 4th phase was handed over to China, barring the call for tenders, not a single step has been taken to initiate the construction. Meanwhile, it is also revealed that Sri Lanka has to pay $21 million due to an agreement reached with China in 2017 for the maintenance and consultation of the Norachole power plant. However, only $3 million have been paid so far. On the 3rd of December 2021, a complete blackout was experienced. We clearly said it was a conspiracy. Even the report regarding it said the blackout was questionable. But today, the investigations into it have been forgotten. The A-level exams will commence soon. It is unacceptable to announce power cuts at a time when children are preparing for their exams. Do not do this. Last night, many provinces in the country experienced power outages. By today, the CEB is largely unpopular among the masses. The CEB is running through a reload system at present. There are power cuts in all areas which we visit. They have imposed power cuts here as well. If these schools didn't receive smart boards, computers or printers, then they wouldn't have imposed power cuts. This is dirty politics. It's regrettable. We need a disciplined approach in our country. We must remove this hatred Sri Lanka received a $500 million line of credit from India to purchase fuel today. The agreement was signed between the Exim Bank of India and Sri Lanka's Treasury. Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa and India's High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, Gopal Bagle, were present. The Indian High Commission said this critical support comes after a recent meeting between the Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa.
Now, Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa says the special goods and services tax would be collected by 3 state entities. Speaking to reporters today, he said the tax would be collected by the Customs, Inland Revenue and Excise departments. The minister made these remarks at a media briefing to launch a rural development program today.
There are 5 taxes collected by 5 separate institutions. For example, the Excise Department collects the excise duty. The VAT is collected by the Inland Revenue Department. The TRC collects the telecommunications levy. The tax on cigarettes and vehicles is collected by the Customs. They were supposed to transfer the money to the Treasury. However, they have not done that. We will collect the money. If they are willing to transfer the money to us, we will allow them to collect taxes. It's better if we don't raise such conflicting matters. It is difficult to comment on many moves that were undertaken during the war.
In more local news, 3 suspects have surrendered to the police over an assault on a group of medical students at the Ragama Medical Faculty. Police said 6 suspects have been arrested so far in connection to the incident. They have been remanded after being produced at the Valisura Magistrates Court. The suspects will be produced before an identification parade tomorrow.
The brawl had taken place at the Boys' Hospital of the Medical Faculty of the Kelniya University in Ragama earlier this morning. Police said investigations have revealed that the clash was between 3rd and 4th year students. 3 students are receiving treatment at the Ragama hospital while 1 student was hospitalized at the Negombo hospital. The 4th year students claim that a group had arrived in a vehicle belonging to the Coconut Development Authority. The driver and the vehicle are in police custody.
Idamha Parliament Sanskana Matanshe, personal staff of Honorable Arundika Fernando MP, Puttalam District. May Kaganama DK Samaratung.
Pandra Tunatita Uni, Hadisi Illa, Peknik Paradima Sidula, Tote Tekmatama Pekati Megatuni, Police in a Kota Katia, Nanlagila, Kenika Pialana, Jeta Duna, Tota Pahalak, Iterapirisa, the Polu, baseball Visa, Nanchapu.
At around 11 last night, a BMW vehicle and a blue car had forcefully been parked near the university hostel. The group that arrived in these vehicles had poles with them. Some of them had nunchucks, cricket bats, hockey sticks and iron poles. About 15 people got down from these vehicles and then attacked some university students. One vehicle had a number plate WPKI2376. This had been registered to the Coconut Development Authority. We found an identity card of an attacker who fled the scene. According to the ID, the person belongs to the personal staff of Parliamentarian Arundika Fernando. It is clear that the government, including Mahinda Rajapaksa, have reintroduced the culture of attacking students using poles at universities. This is the person who ordered the attack. How can this minister suppress the students of the Ragama Medical Faculty and attack them? This is them trying to recover the vehicle they left behind. Even when the police is around, these thugs attempted to take the vehicle away.
දිගින් දිගට උත්සාහ ගන්නවා. දිගින් දිගට උත්සාහ ගන්නවා.
I am aware of this incident. I got to know of it this morning. If any one of us is connected to this incident, stern action must be taken following an inquiry. But I feel that there are two sides to this story. I have been informed that a student who attempted to settle the scuffle had been attacked. He is someone who spoke against ragging and was assaulted several times because of it. Therefore, we wish to request for an impartial investigation into this matter. I have ordered the IGP to conduct an extensive investigation into this. 2 police teams have been assigned by the SSP of Kelaniya, operating under the DIG of the Western Province. There's human evidence as well as video evidence. I have advised the IGP to enact the law against anyone, regardless of their social status. News First inquired about the incident from Professor Janaki Hebawasanti, the head of the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Kelaniya. She said an internal investigation is being conducted into the matter.
Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa says a limited crowd is opposing moves to improve the knowledge of children in terms of technology.
Today we have to take forward the ideologies put forth by CWW Kannangara. There is still a handle group of people of our country who are against the development of technology in the country. These people are against this because they envy the middle class children receiving such education. They only want their children to be educated on technology. Educating children on these matters will release them from the mindset of slavery. The group that is opposing this education considers it to be a social issue. These jealous political forces can't carry out these activities, nor do they allow the people who do this to proceed. This is a movement against the digital revolution in the country.
The opposition leader today donated smart boards and computers to classrooms at Vidya Pradeepa Mahavidyalaya in Anuradhapura under the 13th phase of the Sakvala program.
Take a look at a story that's made the headlines tonight. The Jatika Janabalavegya is demanding swift investigations into an egg attack at one of their recent meetings. The party submitted a complaint to the police chief to this effect today.
The Jatika Janabalavegya handed over a complaint to the police chief today. They say there is slow progress over the probe into a recent egg attack at one of their meetings, despite arresting 2 suspects.
We
don't consider this as an attempt to simply hurl eggs at a political meeting. Therefore, we told the IGP that we are not happy over the investigations. The police has not been able to arrest those involved or not even record a statement from them. I saw Minister Namal Rajapaksa had commented on this. We don't really take that into account. That's because he doesn't even know that his father underwent a surgery and what happened to the money in his father's account. By conducting investigations, we can find out who is at the end of the chain. We feel that these investigations are being delayed due to that. Therefore, we believe that the person at the end of this chain must be uncovered in the coming days. Otherwise, we will blame the government over this. Then 4 days have passed. They are trying to cover this up. We will have to accuse the government that this is being done with a political motive, with the support of political forces and the knowledge of political entities. Those who hurled eggs have been arrested. Now we need to know who asked them to throw eggs. 2 people are in custody, but SB Dissanayake is trying to pin the blame on the Frontline Socialist Party. We wish to tell SB Dissanayake that he can't deceive us anymore with that. The government that came to power to find out the bombers is now hurling eggs.
The Frontline Socialist Party expressed these views today. The supporters of SB Disanayaka and Nisanka Senadipati have cleaned their hands at a time when this government has had enough. The general public understands this well. This is clearly a question of democracy. We view this as a challenge posed to us. We are asking the public to look beyond the politics that is played out here and to understand the reality. I don't think there is a need to see what a person such as SB has said. He is a man who has failed in politics. He is a man who has been rejected.
The International Commission of Jurists says Sri Lanka must repeal the Prevention of Terrorism Act rather than amending it.
The International Commission of Jurists has said the proposed amendments to the Prevention of Terrorism Act are insufficient. In a statement, it said the law would still allow people to be detained for an entire year without being produced in court. The ICJ stressed that any detainee must be produced in court. The statement pointed out that in practice, victims are routinely denied full and confidential legal access. It said the amendments don't address the vague definition of terrorism and the lack of judicial oversight on the arrest of suspects. In a tweet, the ICJ said the Sri Lankan government is doing its bare minimum ahead of the UN Human Rights Council session. The tweet read that this is an attempt to deflect focus away from its failing human rights record. The UNHRC sessions are to begin on the 28th of this month.
Now, Sri Lanka is to host the Bimstek summit on the 30th of March this year. The last summit had taken place in Nepal in 2018.
Sri Lanka is to host the Bimstek summit on the 30th of March this year. Bimstek is a 7-member grouping that includes India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Thailand and Sri Lanka. Reports show that the Bimstek Charter, Master Plan for Transport Connectivity and Convention on Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters will be signed at the summit. The group will also work towards finalizing the Coastal Shipping Agreement and the Motor Vehicles Agreement. Indian media reported that it is possible that the summit will take place in a hybrid format.
Maldivian President Ibrahim Soleil has requested Sri Lanka to waive visa fees for students under 18 years.
Maldivian President Ibrahim Soleil has requested the Sri Lankan government to waive off visa fees for Maldivian students below the age of 18. He had said that it would provide great relief for Maldivian families residing in Sri Lanka. The request had been made when Sri Lanka's High Commissioner to Maldives, A.M. Jafar Sadiq, presented credentials to the president yesterday. The president and the High Commissioner had discussed several matters, including economic cooperation, education and agricultural development.
Colombo Additional Magistrate Rajendra Jayasuriya ordered the release of 3 workers from the All Saints Church in Colombo, where a hand grenade was discovered in January this year.
Meanwhile, during the hearing into the incident where a hand grenade was found in the All Saints Church in Boralla, Colombo Additional Magistrate Rajendra Jayasuriya stated today that the court is not satisfied in the manner in which the investigations are being carried out. She then ordered the Colombo Crimes Division to expedite the investigation and report to the court on the 28th of this month. At the request of the Colombo Crimes Division, permission was also granted today by the court to inspect the bank accounts of the family members of the arrested suspect, who is a doctor. Meanwhile, Deputy Solicitor General Dileepa Piris informed the court today that a suspect who is currently in the custody under the name Liyanage Dayasena has been clearly identified as the handler who brought the grenade into the premises. The Deputy Solicitor General further stated that during the investigations, it was revealed that this suspect was an ally of Army Jine, who is a member of an underworld gang in the southern part of the island. He also said that the doctor, who is currently in custody in connection to the incident, was arrested after interrogating the handler of the grenade. The Deputy Solicitor General further stated that another person under the name Ruansiri, who is a resident in the same village as the suspect Liyanage Dayasena, had worked as a security guard under the doctor for some time, and that the hand grenade had been delivered to the doctor by this worker. Attorney-at-law Chaminda Atukorala, who appeared for the suspect, said that the allegations made by the Colombo Crimes Division against his client are unsubstantiated. The defense attorney also informed the court that regardless of many attempts made by him to meet his client, he was not given the opportunity by the authorities since his client was taken into custody. Meanwhile, the Colombo Additional Magistrate, after the hearing, ordered the release of the 3 church workers. The release was made after the Deputy Solicitor General informed the court that these 3 suspects had nothing to do with the incident. However, a few days after the incident was reported, the Minister of Public Securities had this to say. The police visited the location and conducted investigations. They arrested 4 people. A 14-year-old child had given evidence at the magistrate's court over this. There is a person of Tamil nationality who has been working at the temple for about 10 years. He is also said to have handled the bag containing the hand grenade. The man had admitted that he had placed the bag containing the grenade on the altar. The explosive had been made using an instant stick instead of a pin and by tying a bunch of matchsticks using a rubber band, in a way that it would explode if the matchsticks were set on fire. When we visited the room of that person, we saw a box of matches. About 15 matches in that box were missing. There were instant sticks and tape as well. That is why he was arrested. However, Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, had later released security camera footage of the incident and insisted investigations to be conducted properly.
The Group Finance Director of the Capital Maharaja Group, Angelo Patrick, participated in a mangrove regeneration project in Batticaloa today.
The planting of about 350 mangroves took place at the estuary adjoining the Vaunathivu village in Batticaloa today. The event, organized by the Wildlife and Nature Protection Society, was held under the patronage of the Group Finance Director of the Capital Maharaja Group, Angelo Patrick.
The usefulness of the mangroves is that it provides a wonderful breeding ground for sea life, crabs, prawns, and protects them during incubation period from the fishermen. Mangroves also emanate a large amount of oxygen into the atmosphere and absorb very large amount of carbon dioxide. Then this sort of exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen helps to purify the atmosphere a great deal.
The 350 mangrove trees were planted with the hope of preserving marine life in the area.
In international news, Russian President Vladimir Putin says the United States and its allies have ignored Russia's top security demands. He says Moscow remains open to more talks with the West to ease soaring tensions over Ukraine.
Russian President Vladimir Putin yesterday said the US wanted to contain Russia and that it was using Ukraine to do that. He reiterated Russia's position that any possible membership of Ukraine in NATO would undermine Russia's security. Russia had demanded for guarantees that NATO won't expand to Ukraine and won't deploy weapons near the Russian border.
Let's imagine that Ukraine is a NATO member state and it initiates a military operation. What should we do then? Should we fight against the NATO bloc? Did anyone think at least something about that? Apparently not.
The Russian president made these remarks following talks with the Hungarian Prime Minister.
And that's a wrap from today's edition of Primetime News and the Newsfirst English News team. For the team, I'm Mahina Bongzo, along with our sign language interpreter, Brian De Cruz, this evening. Take care and good night.